Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning back in to the show. Welcome back to Soul Wide Open with me, your host, Michelle Renee. Okay, the reason why I said tuning in, and thanks for tuning back in, is because we're going to be talking about a really sort of, I think, even a delicate topic today, especially with everything going on in the world today. There's so much happening in the world of politics, what's going on in our society, lots to talk about, lots going on. I just got to thinking after listening to a client of mine talking on his podcast and talking to one of his guests about what it is we are tuning into. Just like an old radio, like what he used to say, like you'd have to tune in those dials and turn those dials and really get it right where you needed it to be in order to tune in to something on the radio way back in the day. We do that today, but we do that on social media. We do that with the television. We do that with the conversations we have. We do that with all of the information that is available to us, that just like the old time radios, so much of it is just static. Are we tuning into the static that is actually doing something that could have such a negative impact on not only our nervous system, but our mindset, our outlook, our levels of anxiety, our levels of frustration, whatever it is? It has everything to do with what we are choosing to tune into, which is why I'm actually playing an old-fashioned record right now on a record player, and I'm tuning into Fleetwood Mac, one of my all-time favorites. We're gonna jump into it right now.
Welcome to the Soul Wide Open podcast with your host, author and certified trauma-informed coach Michelle Renee.
What is it that you are spending the majority of your time digesting into your being? What is it that you're feeding your soul, your mind, your body, everything on every cellular level? Whatever it is that you're tuned into, it is going to seep in. It is going to live there. The information that we continuously, and in many cases constantly, consume many times ends up just breeding and breeding and breeding to the point where it can literally make us physically ill. It can create all kinds of anxiety, all kinds of other things that are happening to us on a mental, spiritual, emotional, and yes, even a physical level. And for those of us who have survived and have gone through traumatic experiences, we may not even be realizing that it is the information and what we are consuming on, whether it's the music, are we listening to super angry music? Are we watching really violent things on TV? Are we watching negative things and listening and reading to really negative things that are feeding into the state of our overall being and our overall well-being? And that's what I really want to get into and talk about today, because I was actually triggered by something that just happened, and it really reminded me about the conversation that I was listening to, that my client, and we produce this podcast through my company, Verb Media Group, and I was listening to this conversation he was having with one of his guests, and they were talking about tuning in like an old radio. What frequencies are we tuning into? And it really dawned on me that so much of what we're consuming, we have to protect how that is being received internally and be so tuned into our own frequencies that we have the ability to recognize when that information is negatively impacting us in any way. It could be physically, it could be we're tuning into things that are showing what's going on in the food industry, or they're showing all this food on TV that's this big marketing campaign that makes it look amazing and sound healthy and all this stuff, and we're running to the store, we're running to a fast food because we're having a craving, and we're giving into that, and we're feeding our bodies with something that is actually really, really harmful to us. And it's the same thing with information. It's the same thing with what's going on social media. What's going on in mainstream media is even, I mean, what is happening in mainstream media is just so much information that could literally be poisoning you, and the same with social media. So I had a situation that happened last night, which is what brought on this topic for this episode. So there's this great new show, which the writing is amazing. As somebody who's a videographer, cinematographer, I get that everything about this, from the cinematography to the writing to how this is filmed, this show is absolutely amazing on so many levels. And so my brother and his wife are like, "You haven't seen it? Oh my gosh, you got to see it." I'm like, "Sounds good. I really like this director, this writer." And I begin to watch this show. And I'm not going to say what the show is because I know there's a lot of people out there that they're huge fans. It's a huge, very popular show right now. And I sit down and I start watching this, and by the end of episode 1, I literally felt like I just had gotten blasted with shrapnel or something, because the violence in this show, the amount of violence in this show was so just, the amount of violence in this show was a lot. And it was almost like you could barely take a breath between the really hyper violent scenes and what was going on. And I am very hyper aware of protecting not only my energy, but what I'm consuming, how much of it I'm consuming, how is the information that I'm consuming affecting me, and being in tune with that. And last night, as I was watching this, it began to be really difficult for me to continue to watch this show. And I thought, okay, maybe it'll be less violent. They'll get more into the story behind it and the plot and all of this good stuff behind it in episode 2. But I will not be able to watch this show beyond episode 2, because even episode 2 for me was just, it was too much violence for what I know is not healthy for me to consume in terms of protecting my energy, the triggers that I have growing up in a violent home, being, abducted very, very violently. My first boyfriend was really violent. So for me, violence and violent content in general is very much a negative for me. And it's really difficult for me to really take much of that in without beginning to really feel it in every way. In my body, I feel my body start to tense, my shoulders start to go up towards my ears. I'm just sitting there, and next thing you know, I'm like in a ball, like 20 minutes into a show like that. I'm just like this. And for me, I know that that's just not healthy for me at all. And another thing that's happening, I was talking to my brother about it just a little while ago, is the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, boxing match that's going to be happening tonight. And I went on social media, and it's just everywhere. This boxing match, I guess, is the biggest deal since sliced bread. I don't even know, or the biggest deal since Mike Tyson was actually popular in the boxing ring, or Muhammad Ali, or what have you. But for me, I don't understand how people are tuning into this fight, and was asking my brother, what is it that people are so obsessed with needing to see this? Because it isn't like it is the top of the elite, testing their skills against each other. It's a 60-year-old retired boxer and somebody who's kind of at the peak of their career. And this is so obviously pretty much just for entertainment purposes. And I just don't understand how you can consume that, understanding that it's for entertainment purposes, and just want to sit there and spend your time watching two people just beat on each other. I don't get that. I don't understand how that tuning into that frequency and absorbing that information is going to help anybody in any kind of a healthy, positive way whatsoever. And this is true in every area of our lives. And with so much going on in the political, arena, and what's going on in society, it is especially true right now. I am watching what is going on, and not to a great extent, because again, how much we consume, I want to be educated on what's going on, but do I want to be in a place where I am consuming it so much of my day that I'm dropping the ball on certain responsibilities, I'm not getting my work done, I'm not meeting deadlines, I'm starting to feel, when you're intaking all of this information, you'll feel it in your body if you're paying attention. You'll start to feel more tired. You'll start to feel more bogged down. You will literally begin to feel the joy, like leaving your body and exiting your life. Like you will begin to see that there's not as much joy. You're not focused on the things that are actually bringing you joy and motivating you and inspiring you to get out and go for a hike or go do the things that you really love to do. And you get really sucked into this negative vortex of information that is, in my opinion, if you do it too much, it's like anything else. If you take too much, nighttime cold medicine, it's poisonous to you. If you take too much of this medicine, if you take too much of this information, it is poison to us. And it's good to be educated. It's good to know what's going on. And I am all about having the right information. I love data. I love analytics. I love knowing what's going on. I love knowing, who Trump is appointing in his new administration so that I can be at least somewhat, on some level of awareness of what is going on. But am I going down every single rabbit hole that I could be choosing to go down and spending hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a day finding every little thing wrong with each person that he's choosing? And no, I'm not. And I'm seeing all the stuff that's going on with the extreme left side. They're shaving their heads and they're doing all of this absolutely insane stuff. And I guess you can call it they're taking a stand for their belief system, okay? But honestly, what are you tuning into that is causing you to take these absolute drastic actions that aren't going to really benefit anyone, to be honest? And I think the extreme actions, no matter which side you're on, any type of extreme action that people are taking, you can take a stand for what you believe in without really taking stabs and digs at other people and calling other people horrific names and going down these rabbit holes and filling your mind and your body with all of this negative information, this hate and this anger and this bitterness and this vile, literally vile content that, whether you know it or not, whether you realize it or not, it is seeping in. It'll set up camp. It'll start setting up a little homestead in your mind, and it will begin to breed. It will begin to grow within you and start to literally take over what you think about and what your day looks like and the amount of joy that you feel and how you show up in the world. I mean, these people, the way that they're showing up in the world because of the amount of content that they have chosen to consume and how that has now consumed them, they are no longer consuming it, it is consuming them. That is when you know it has just gotten so far out of your own control and your ability to really understand what this information and what being tuned into the wrong dial is doing to you and doing to your life and doing to the people around you. And what are you neglecting? I mean, I know people that are so wrapped up in this that I mean, they're not cleaning their house. They're not, they are just spending their entire existence focused on this, and it has literally consumed them instead of the other way around. So I really wanted to bring this to everyone who's listening, because we have the choice to make of whether or not we're tuning into, what I'm listening to today, that's Fleetwood Mac, or are you tuning into, some people really enjoy the death metal, and the for me, the feeling of that for me personally is just too dark, it's too violent, it's too aggressive, it's just too aggressive. It feels like nails on a chalkboard for me. And maybe for some people it doesn't feel that way, but I know that I need to be in tune enough with myself and with who I am and with what my triggers are, keeping in mind my own state of mind, my own peace, what my goals are, what my intentions are every single day, and how I want to show up in the world every day. And inputting this angry, negative music, angry, negative violence from the TV, angry, negative things from the internet isn't going to help me in any way positive at all. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, it will dim your light quicker than almost anything. I mean, it will begin to absolutely dim your light and suck the life right out of you. And the next thing you know, you are, wondering why you've ended up in the place that you're at, and you're not taking responsibility for the fact that you have made the choice for months and months and months, and sometimes for years and years and years, to do nothing but consume negative information, that you've done nothing but sit around and consume drama on the television with like the Real Housewives, just nothing but fighting and yelling and drama, or really super violent content, or negative name calling and the hate and the anger that's going on this different sides of politics and everything that's going on. And that's all you have been feeding yourself, your mind, your soul, your being. That's what you've been feeding yourself. And when you just constantly feed just poison to anything, from an animal to a plant to yourself, what happens? It's unhealthy. Something is bound to die from that, whether it's a positive mindset that dies, whether it's your body beginning to fall apart because of what you're feeding it that dies, your goals, your dreams, your motivation, your inspiration, your light, what is it that's being affected by all of this negative information that you're choosing to consume because your radio dial is tuned into the wrong thing? At least the majority of the time. Sure, do I tune into that stuff every once in a while? Yeah, but I am, okay, this is negative. 2 episodes, great, bravo on so many levels for that show. But I know for me, I can't stay in that lane. That is really, really a bad place for me to be, because I know what that is doing to my nervous system. I know what that is doing to my state of well-being. And maybe some people can handle that. It doesn't affect them at all. Or maybe they're in denial and they think it doesn't affect them, and it's on a very subconscious level. If you look at this, if you look at statistics and you look at what's going on when it comes to kids playing violent video games all the time, to adults watching violence all the time, and the desensitization that is going on to violence and what that is actually doing to people on a subconscious level, that is a real thing. It is really affecting you whether you know it or not. Find where your dial is tuned into something that feeds you in a really, really positive way. Because if you're focused on healing and you're focused on taking yourself to that next level of healing and being in the world, and you want to start living with your soul wide open, being tuned into negativity, being tuned into violence, being tuned into anger and hate, and feeding that to yourself constantly or even on a regular basis, I'm going to be the bearer of bad news right now. You're not going to make it. You cannot have all of this negative information and all of this violence and be feeding yourself all of this stuff and simultaneously be growing in a beautiful, healing, positive way that's going to help you reach your goal in terms of the healing space. Because honestly, how do you download and get rid of all of that while you're continuously feeding yourself more of it? You're just filling up on the same stuff that you're trying to get rid of. It doesn't work. It won't work. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it can work. Maybe for some people it works. Maybe they can just watch and listen to all the violence and anger and negativity that they want, and they can still heal and be positive and be this light in the world and go do all the things they want to do and be a positive force in the world. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's true. But I don't know how it could be that you could really 100% get to that place at the 100% most optimal level that you are desiring to get through in your healing journey, and get to a place where you're just letting all of that go and you're really embracing as much joy in your life as possible while you're filling up your head with all of this other stuff that is the opposite of joy. For me, it doesn't make any sense. So for all of you out there listening, I really want to encourage you to take inventory on what it is that you're consuming and how much of it are you consuming. How much of the day are you consuming negative information, violent content, angry content, drama, yelling, fighting, all of that stuff that's all over the TV, it's all over social media, it's all over everywhere. But you don't even have to have your radio not even necessarily tuned in. You don't even have to have it turned on. You can turn it off and unplug. Are you unplugging when you need to unplug? Are you turning that radio completely off when you need to turn the radio off? Are you tuning that dial and changing that radio station when you need to? When your body is beginning to feel like it's just a little too heavy. Like, I've been consuming just a little bit too much of this. It's time to switch it up. Instead of getting completely sucked into that vortex of negativity and negative violence, all that kind of stuff, and that's all you're consuming, and the next thing you know, you find yourself sick. You find yourself, all you're doing is thinking about it. And if all you're doing is thinking about all of that stuff that you've been consuming that's going on out there that's negative, hate to break it to you, but that's sickness. So I encourage you, take inventory. What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you tuning into? How long are you tuning into it? And then right next to it, make a commitment right now how much of it you're going to begin to cut out and fill that time and that space in your life and that space in your mind and that space in your soul. What are you going to fill that with that's positive? Is it going to be music, great music that makes you happy and feel joy and want to dance? We just had the kids in here. We turned this on and they started dancing. And we're going to call this, and I'm at my brother's up in Northern California right now. This is now the dance room. Like, are you going to fill it with making your living room a dance room certain times of the day or a few times a week? Or are you going to go on a hike or a walk or a bike ride? Are you going to listen to comedy? What are you going to fill that time and that space with that isn't negative, that isn't drama, yelling, fighting, anger, violence, all that? How much are you going to cut out? And what are you going to fill that time with? And it might just be reading. It might be meditating. It might be taking a nice hot bath. It might be going to the gym. It could be so many things that you could be filling that time with and that space with. That's actually going to feed you and your mind and your spirit on every single level. On every level, this stuff hits you at a cellular level that you're not even aware of. What are you going to fill that with? Let me know over on Instagram what you are going to begin to fill that time and space with. It's _Michelle Renee _ come over, say hello, leave it your comments. Let me know what you think about this episode. Be sure you share it, like it, love it. And I'm going to go change the record. And I think my next up is going to be Gordon Lightfoot. Great storyteller, one of my favorites. Go tune into something positive and something amazing. Live with your soul wide open, and I will see you on the next one.